My mother-in-law came to stay with us one summer. She had been living with my wife's brother and his family. My wife's brother was going to spend a summer on an internship at the Cleveland Clinic, working towards his medical degree. And so my mother-in-law had Alzheimer's disease, and when her son left for the clinic, after about a half an hour, she asked my wife, her daughter, where's my son? My wife said, he's at the Cleveland Clinic and he'll be back at 5:30. So this satisfied her. This made her feel all right with the fact that he wasn't there, but that he was coming back. However, because of the dementia, after about 20 minutes, she forgot that episode, came back to my wife and said, where's my son? Often caregivers or staff are told to just be patient and keep answering the question the same way. It's very frustrating. Repetitive behaviors are one of the highest stressors for caregivers in residential settings and family settings. My wife, being a Montessori teacher, approached it in a different way. She wrote a sign which said, your son is at the Cleveland Clinic. He'll be back at 5:30. She asked her mother to read it. And so this ensured that her mom was able to use this. It was also the information that satisfied her mother. So what's the best thing, what's the best information to put into a cognitive ramp, into an external aid like this? They decide. If it works, we use that. If not, we explore until we find the answer that satisfies their need, that reduces their anxiety. So then my wife took this message, taped it onto the kitchen countertop. Because if you don't, the external aid will disappear. No one will be able to find it. We've made all the mistakes already. And so when her mother asked again, she said, there's a message about that. Let's go see. So she didn't tell her the answer to the question, her mother. She started practicing a procedure. And the procedure was to go to this location, because we know location learning is available to people with dementia. She pointed to the sign and said, what does this say? So this is important. She did not read the sign for her mother. She gave her mother practice reading the sign for herself. The sign had the information that calmed her down. And then my wife said, that's right. Whenever you want to know about your son, you can come right here. An hour later, her mother said, where's my son? And my wife practiced the same procedure in the same way. If you want to learn a procedure, practice it in the same way. It's like when I'm trying to putt at golf. If I practice different ways of putting on each green, I never really learn how to putt well. And so she used the same approach. There's a message about that. Let's go see. Walked with her mother. What does this say? After 2 or 3 of those repetitions, for the rest of the day, when her mother would become anxious, her feet would carry her to this location, just like our feet carry us to the location of where we usually sit for lunch if we work in a certain place, or if a resident usually sits in a certain place for lunch. Location learning. Her mother looked at the sign. She read it to herself. The sign reduced her anxiety, and that feeling of anxiety reduction became associated with this location and with this process. And what my wife was able to do was to enable her mother to reduce her own anxiety independently, and to free my wife from having to always be answering a question, but also to free her mother, because her mother did not need to keep coming to my wife. Her mother did not need to carry around this anxiety all the time. And so a system was set up so that the anxiety was reduced, and that feeling of safety, that feeling of not having to be anxious in a sense, became associated with this process and this location in our house. And so it's a simple method. It doesn't cost anything. All that's required is a different way of thinking. The knowledge that a person with dementia can learn if we use the learning capacities that they do have.